Right, hi everybody. My name is Jess L, and I am an alcoholic. And through the grace of a loving God that I was introduced to in meetings just like this, and through watching and interacting with people just like you, it has not been necessary for me to have a drink of alcohol since January the 10th, 1990, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I don't say that, to tell you the truth, the real reason I say that, give my sobriety day, I try to give my sobriety day every chance I get. Not to brag, but just in case we ever get a pension going around this place, I want to make sure I get credit for all my time and get invested in something like that. But appreciate Curtis asking me to speak. We have not been in this area very long. I got sober in Dallas in January of '90 in Dallas area and stayed there for a good while. Moved to Sulphur Springs. That was my first introduction to you guys, and Tyler specifically. Went to all of the anniversaries, and we'd come down from Sulphur Springs and just hit a group and just to do something different. And so we were in that area for about 15 years, I guess, and then just recently moved back from North Carolina, and we were in North Carolina for about 6 years. And I'm glad to be here, glad to be back in this area. This is always, I don't know why I have trouble at this moment every time I talk, because I always say the exact same thing when I get started, but I keep thinking I'm going to think of something clever, but I never do. So I was born at a very early age into a farming and ranching family in far west Texas, in a little town. I was born in a town called La Mesa, about 60 miles south of Lubbock. We were cotton farmers. We had a section of cotton land up on the Cap Rock, and then we had 3 sections of ranch, and we ran a cow-calf operation down around the Gale area, if anybody's familiar with that part of the world. Oh, yeah, that's cool. And was born, my dad was an alcoholic, and grew up in that environment. And having been around a lot of you guys, I know that my experience of growing up in an alcoholic home was middle of the road. I mean, a lot of people had it much, much worse than I did. But it's always tough growing up in an alcoholic home. And you learn some things, and you learn to be hypervigilant. And you learn to read micro-expression on faces. And you learn to read a room. You get a temperature of the room almost instantly when you walk in. And things like that, and it makes you a little neurotic. Our book speaks to that specifically, make neurotic out of wives and family members. And but that's not why I'm an alcoholic. It has nothing to do with it, really. I think I was, there's some talk about alcoholism being genetic, and maybe it is. I don't know. I know that I never drank socially, and I found that out for sure after my current wife and I got married, and there's a whole nest of social drinkers in her family. They're just covered up with social drinkers, and I always thought, well, I was social when I drank, but I was not a social drinker. And I would watch these people, and they'd have a couple of drinks, and they'd quit. And they were having a party at my sister-in-law's house, and I was there just helping set up and do some things. And I knew that there was going to be 20 adults there, and every one of them drank. And I went to the refrigerator and opened up, and there was a couple bottles of wine, maybe a case of beer. And I'm like, sis, where's the rest of the booze? She goes, that's all we're going to, that's plenty. No, do you need me to run to the liquor store and get some liquor and some wine and 3 or 4 more cases of beer and a couple cases of wine and a case of whiskey, because you got 20 drinkers coming. That's about right. You might have a little left over, but she's looking at me, and I've been sober 20 odd years by this time. She'd heard my story, and she knew. She's just like, no, Jess, we're fine. I'm like, this party's gonna suck. And at the end of the night, we were cleaning up, and they had about a half a bottle of wine left, 2 or 3 beers in the refrigerator. I'm like, and everybody had a great time. And I'm like, that is so foreign to my experience. I have never our book says that the obsession of the alcoholic is to control and enjoy his drinking. And I could do one or the other. I could control it, and I did not enjoy it. But if I enjoyed it, it was out of control. And just a couple of stories. I'm not going to spend much time on a drunken log. But I'll tell you this, just so we can relate a little bit. I guess you're supposed to do that. I like talking about the other side of things. A lot more interesting, I think. But here's how I would drink, and I did most of my drinking in Stephenville, and as a college student, spent about 2 years, and it was hard on drinking. I mean, mainly because I worked at a bar and I could drink for free, and so I did, and I like drinking. Sometimes you'll hear a speaker, they'll get up and they'll badmouth drinking. All drinking was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I'm like, my worst day sobers, I'd rather see what does that go? Wouldn't trade my best day drinking for my worst day sober. I would. I had a great time drinking. I mean, my drinking is not all tears and heartbreak and all that kind of stuff. I had fun drinking. And I hate it when people badmouth drinking. Badmouth alcohol. I mean, yeah, she's a little ragged around the edges now, but back in the day, boy, she was my homecoming queen and my sweetheart, and she was everything I ever wanted in the world. And if alcohol did for you what it did for me, you would drink like I drank. Why wouldn't you? But it caused, my alcoholism, I think alcoholism in general has almost nothing to do with drinking, which seems weird. I wish we could change the name. I'm not sure what we change it to, but I wish we could, because people think, it's about alcohol. And if I quit drinking alcohol, my life will get better. Mine never did until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was as sober between every 2 drunks I ever had as I am standing here tonight, as physically sober as I am right now, and I hated it. And I never considered suicide when I was drunk. I always considered suicide when I was sober. And the best idea that I could get was to either kill myself or go get something to drink. And unfortunately, I choose something to drink. And so here's a typical day in my head. And maybe some of you guys relate, but here's what's going on in my head. Especially when I'm not drinking. Right? And it's like there's a big TV screen in my head, and there's like 500 channels of cable in my head, and every channel is me rehearsing a conversation that I'm going to have with you or her or the boss or the guy in front of me who's driving too slow or the guy behind me who's trying to drive too fast or anybody, and it's just constant. And it had been this way all my life. And it'd be like this: I cannot believe what my wife said to me today. You know what? Here's what we're going to have to do to straighten her out. Is I'm going to go home. I'm going to say this, and she'll say that, and then she'll say, and then I'll say, and bam, and she'll finally realize how horrible she's been treating me, and how selfish and self-centered, and she'll change, and we'll finally get this straight, and then the channel will change. And you know what about my boss? That son of a gun, he's never appreciated me for who I am. And the channel changes. And it's always, always, always going. And the volume is at 11. If any of y'all saw that old rock and roll movie. Yeah, what's the name of it? Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap. There we go. Spinal Tap. Their amps would go to 11. Because they were, yeah. And that's how my head was all the time. And I never knew that wasn't normal. And what would happen is I wanted to have about 3 or 5 drinks, somewhere in there. That seemed to be the sweet spot, where the volume in my head would go down, and I could go, okay, all right. Now I can think and start to process this thing. But by then, as I've got alcoholism, And that's the mental obsession. That's the mental stuff that is going on in my head all the time. And the volume on that goes down somewhere between 3 and 5 drinks. And if that was the end of it, I would just be a hard drinker. I'd drink 3 to 5 drinks every day, maybe several times a day, just to get the volume of my head modulated to where it was just manageable. And I could go about my day in a sane and reasonable way. But I'm an alcoholic, and that when I have 3 to 5 drinks, the Silkworth talks about it being an allergy, and it's an abnormal reaction. It's a physiological reaction that happens in people like me that does not happen in the normal temperate drinker. People like my wife, people like my sister-in-law, and that whole clan of social drinkers. This never happens to them. And what happens to them, what happens to me and not them, is that somewhere around 3 to 5 drinks, I've got to keep drinking. And I don't want to keep drinking. I want to stop. And I have drank against my will and against my better judgment dozens and dozens of times. But I've got to drink because I got to turn this down. But I can't drink because if I do that, things like this happen. I'm sitting in my bar in Stephenville, Texas, minding my own business. Have no intention of doing nothing but drinking and going home. Everything's fine. And I blink, and I am standing in a room that I do not recognize, the bar, full of people who are speaking Spanish. Nobody's speaking English. And I was just a blink ago, I was sitting at the bar in Stephenville, Texas, and now I have no idea where I am. But this has happened to me so often because I'm a blackout drinker that I know to go outside and find a newspaper so I can find out what town I am and what day it is. You know, you develop skills. You drink like I do, and things happen. You develop some skills, some ways of dealing with these little things like blinking and waking up in a foreign country. And they're speaking Spanish, and I'm thinking, okay, where all do they speak Spanish? Well, of course, Mexico. But Spain, and this is before you had to have anything except passport and money. You could just walk onto an airplane. You could give the gate lady cash and flash your passport and get on an airplane and go anywhere in the world. And that was a possibility. I used to say I could have been in Portugal, but then I found out they speak Portuguese in Portugal, and that sounds the same to me. I didn't know any better. And I go out, and thank God I find my buddies. And but you got to be cool, right? You can't let them know you have no idea where you are. That's not cool. So you go up and say, "You guys about ready to get out of here?" Yeah. Well, where are we going next? Trying to fill in the pieces, and eventually I figured out that I was in the bar and they came in. They knew that my family had a cabin in Ruidoso, New Mexico. And well, if you go that way from Stephenville for a long time, you'll get to El Paso, and then you turn right, and in an hour and 2 hours, whatever, you'll be in Ruidoso. But you turn left, you go to Mexico. And apparently we turned left, and I had no idea. And that was the same day. It was still Saturday. Well, technically Sunday morning. And the other thing that happened to me similar to that was I was sitting in the same bar, and I blinked, and I'm looking at an ocean. Y'all know where Stephenville is. There ain't no ocean down the street from Stephenville. And I'm like, and the sun's coming up. And I'm like, not again, And so we're sitting there and we're ordering breakfast, me and them, and of course you got to be cool again. You can't go, "Hey, I just came out of a blackout. Can y'all tell me where we are and what day it is?" Can't do that, right? I mean, that's not cool. They'll look at you like you might have a drinking problem. And I want to avoid that at all costs, because people with drinking problems need to quit drinking. And I wasn't quitting drinking. That was the only thing going for me. It was the only thing keeping me alive. And so I go out, and we're in Galveston, out on a pier in the Gulf, and it's Tuesday. And last time I looked, when I was at my bar minding my own business, once again, it was Saturday. I have no idea what happened the rest of Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday, until we landed at that bar Tuesday morning. But that's my life. That's what I do. I want to go in, I want to have 3 or 4 drinks. I want to breathe. I want the muscles in my neck to lighten up and and think about things. Think about how I'm going to resolve the problems I caused the last 4 or 5 times I drank. Because drinking caused me problems, but drinking was not the problem. It was this stuff in my head. And that's how alcoholism manifested in me, is this rattling in my head, and the tension builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until the point where I am either going to take a handful of pills, which I know how to do. I did that when I was 13. I took 250,000 milligrams of my dad's heart medicine, thinking it'll either stop it or blow it up, one or the other, you know, and it didn't do either one. I was 13 years old and woke up that morning feeling like the biggest loser on the planet, because who can't get that right? I can't even kill myself like a decent human being, you know? And that started a whole process of psychiatrists and hospitals and conversations with people, and they want to talk about my mama, and I talked to them about their mama, and those relationships tended to break down pretty quickly. And I'm 13 years old, and I'm trying to kill myself because I cannot deal with the world. And fortunately, the next year, I got a part-time job and a driver's license. And I had money in my pocket and transportation. I started drinking, and all of a sudden, suicide's off the table. I don't need to kill. Why would I kill myself? This is great. You know, 3 or 4 drinks into it. Man, I got friends and people that care about me, and you know, life is good. And so that was my life. And I got sober when I was 24. And so it wasn't like I was a has-been, you know. I was a never was. I never did anything. You know, I didn't have any money. We were broke all the time because I can't manage money. My first wife, she can't stand me because I don't know how to manage a relationship. My parents, when I got sober, here's how my family was so glad that I'm sober and so supportive and willing to throw in and help this poor little 24-year-old drunk, that when I picked up my 30-day chip, and my mom, who was by this time a 13 or 14-year member of the Al-Anon program, was at that meeting for whatever reason. And you know, I had never picked up a Desire chip. Never did, because I wasn't sure. When I accidentally, I'll get to that in a minute, but I accidentally came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no intention of staying. I was trying to go to Al-Anon, and but we'll get to that in a minute. So the guy, you know, like we do, had the chips. Anybody here got 30 days? And I'm like, hey, you know, anything for attention, right? And so I go hopping up there, and I'm just so proud. And I go and I see my mom, and I go show her, and she's just, oh, honey, that's great. We're so proud. We're glad you're doing well. And a couple of days later, I get the phone call. Apparently, they got together, and they, you know, when they get together and they don't invite you to the meeting, your life's about to change. You know, and then it did. And they said, you know, honey, we are so glad that you're in Alcoholics Anonymous and that you're doing well, that you're 30 days sober, and all that. But we don't think it's a good idea that we have any contact for a year. And so, and they cut me off financially, and no Christmas cards, nothing, no birthday, nothing. And I was not happy about it at the time, but I understand why they did it now. It was out of self-defense, purely out of self-defense, because I was a manipulator. I am a manipulator. I'm a liar and a cheat and a steal. I'll steal your car and help you go look for it, you know. And they did it out of self-defense. And they knew that I had to grow up and I had to become self-supporting through my own contributions in every way, financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so how I got here, my first wife went to a treatment center for a related disorder. And while she was there, I would go out twice a week out to Abilene, and we'd have these family things like they do. And they said, well, Jess, we think your wife may have a drinking problem. She thinks she may be an alcoholic. What do you think about that? What do you think about your drinking? And I'm like, I think I like my drinking just fine. We need to keep our eyes on the ball, fellas. She's the one in the hospital. I'm at work. I'm doing my thing. Y'all need to keep your eye on the ball here. Don't get caught up in the details on the fringes over here with me. I'm fine. I'll go to Al-Anon. I'll support her. I won't drink around her. We won't have any booze in the house. Once or twice a week I'll go to the bar and if I need to, I'll get a hotel room and not bother her with any of it. I'm thoughtful that way. I'm considerate. And I said I'll go to Al-Anon. So I go to the next. I don't know that next week. I go I'm in Plano. I go to the ODAC group in Plano, and I get there 15 minutes early, which, that's the rules. By this time, my dad had been sober 10 years. My mom had been out on 14 years. This little small town that I grew up in, Hamlin, the group was our house. And so twice a week, we had AA and Al-Anon meetings in my house. And so I was inundated with you people. I knew the Lord. I'd read this book a couple of times just to figure out what's going on in my house, and I loved you people though. I loved being around you, and you were funny and interesting, and you smoked and cussed and talked about God all at the same time. It was just amazing, and especially I liked being around these gals that came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 13, 14 years old, right? So I'd go sit down, kind of lean in and hear, and I'd hear them telling them little stories about what they've been doing out there, and I'm like, I don't know about much, but I need to marry me. I need to find me one of them, because those girls are having some fun. I want, they had what I wanted, and I was willing to go to any length to get it. And of course, I married that one, and we divorced after 4 years of sobriety. So I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew you're supposed to get there. I knew about a sponsor. I knew you're supposed to get there 15 minutes early, or they took your desire chip or something. I don't know what they did if you didn't. But and so I did, and I got there, and it was kind of like this room, a little smaller, and the Al-Anons met in a room over there, right? So the door was there, and I was sitting at the table just like this guy, with my back to the room, and they hadn't shown up yet. The door was locked. So I sit down, I get a cup of coffee, and of course we're doing what we do 15 minutes before the meeting, lying and, whatever, telling stories and drinking coffee, and all of a sudden the guy, before I know it, the guy goes, all right, we're going to have a meeting here. Starts the preamble, and I'm just terrified, but my pride and ego won't let me get up and walk into the next room. And that was my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and I had no desire to quit drinking, not really. I knew it was over though. I knew. You know how you just know that this is not, it can't keep going. This is not sustainable, and I knew. But I was terrified, because if I don't drink, what am I going to do? Who am I going to be? But I never had another drink after that meeting. God was very, very gentle with me. He allowed me to kind of slide in under the radar. And that was January the 10th, 1990. And so and I found here, and what you told me, was if I will do 5 things, I can stay sober as long as I want to. All right, I can do 5 things. How hard can 5 things be? He says you got to go to meetings. Oh, no, I've already gone to meetings. That's all right. Got to get a sponsor. Get and use a sponsor. Not get a sponsor. Get and use a sponsor. Okay, maybe. And they said you got to read the literature. You got to work the steps, and you got to learn how to help other people. And they were right. And I found in doing those 5 things, once I got and used a sponsor, everything else fell in place. The 2 sponsors I've had, they were step working Nazis. They weren't playing around. They didn't care what you did for a living. They didn't care where you're going on vacation. They didn't care about. They want to know what step you're working. and why it's taking you so long to get it done. And the first guy I had as a sponsor, he was a lawyer, and we worked all as much as I could in my amends, because I couldn't talk to my family, right, for over a year. But I was in the 9th step and trying to do 10, 11, and 12 to the best of my ability when I was about 4 months old. And so we humped it through. And I think because he knew I needed it, because as soon as I decided I was going to quit drinking, I knew I was going to quit drinking, suicide came back. And it was a daily thing for me. You know, if I'm going to go to this meeting, if it doesn't work out, I've got tons of pills at home, and I've been around enough for you guys. Some of you guys, you know, like them little tablets from time to time. And I knew what to take now. I knew not to take my dad's heart medicine. I knew to save the pills when I went to the dentist, and he gave me some Percodan, and go fake a back injury at work so I can go get something else. And I had enough. I had enough, and that scared me. And so you guys told me to do those 5 things, and our book talks about what will happen and the skepticism of the new guy. And it talks about there's guys having a conversation with his sponsor. The sponsor's not used in the book, but that's who he was talking to, right? He says, I know I've got to quit drinking, but have you a sufficient substitute? Or am I going to be stupid, boring, and glum like some non-drinkers I know? And he said, yeah, we have a substitute and much more. It's a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you'll find release from boredom and care. And that's why I drank. And what they didn't tell me, because they didn't know, is that the volume in your head would go down. Because I didn't talk about that, because I didn't know that was a problem. I'd had that all my life. It's like a fish becoming aware of water for the first time. And I didn't know that until after I had worked most of the steps and had made what amends I could. And I'm driving a tractor. I worked for Texas A&M Research Center for a number of years, and I was driving a tractor clearing out some old winter grass. And I'm driving along, and I don't know if it happened then or I just realized it then, but I was right here, right now. That was the only thing in my mind, was right here, right now. Oh, look at that little bunny rabbit over there. I bet she's going to have some babies here pretty quick. You know, it's going to be springtime, starting to warm up. Yeah, it'd be cool. Yeah. Oh, there's a snake. I hope he doesn't find them little babies. You know, I'm right here, right now. And I'm not thinking about my boss and what I need to say to him. I'm not thinking about my wife and how she needs to straighten up. I'm not thinking about nothing but what's in front of me. And I had to stop. And I had to go call my sponsor, because I thought something in my mind had finally broken. It was such a different experience than anything I'd ever had before. I thought I had gone insane. And so I called my sponsor, and I said, Tom, you're not going to believe, I tell him what happened. And he goes, oh my God, you little goof. I said, that's called serenity. That's what we're after. Hang on to it, because it ain't going to last very long with you. Click. I'm like, but that was it. That was my first experience with serenity and peace, and not needing to be anywhere else, doing anything else with anybody else. I was perfectly okay right here, right now. And to the extent that I've been able to maintain that, it has not come back. It's back. It's about a 4 volume-wise. It's just back there chattering away right now. I'm thinking about a couple of y'all. Y'all ain't doing it right, And when I worked the steps the first time, I didn't think I had any resentments until I found out what a resentment was. I thought, if you read Bill's description where he's talking about his stuff, he's angry. He's really upset at some people. He says, you were burned up. You're grudgeless. Well, I didn't have that. I found out I'm too lazy to carry a grudge. It takes a lot of energy, to just stoke that fire inside. I got something against Randy. Randy's not dressed properly for chairing a meeting. Well, he call his sponsor after the meeting. And it takes some energy to do that. I'm just too lazy for it. And I just give it up. I don't care about that, whatever, I remember it. but I can't maintain that. But he told me, think about the word resentment. What's the base of resentment? Sentiment, right? Sentiment means to feel. To re-sentiment something. To re-feel it. So is there any experiences in your life, anything you've ever done, anything anybody ever done to you, that when you think about it, you re-feel it? Holy smokes. I mean, I started writing, and I started writing, and I started writing. And I had resentment about, if I could recognize you, I had a resentment against you. Because nobody's doing it right. Everybody in my world needs a little straightening out. If you want to check your where you are, is there anybody in your life that needs straightening out? You know any stupid people? Those are resentments. In my world, those are resentments. And if I'm wandering around, God, there's a bunch of stupid people, stupid drivers, stupid checkout people, stupid store managers, stupid customers. Those are resentments. And my book tells me very, very clearly there's three things I've got to get my arms around. Resentments, fears. I didn't think I was afraid of anything until my sponsor asked me, so you seem to be afraid of failure. Well, yeah, it terrifies me. I mean, what am I going to... It seems also that you're afraid of success. So if you're afraid to fail and you're afraid to succeed, man, you're afraid of everything. And so I thought snakes, and not afraid of heights, afraid of edges. Don't like being on the edge. I can be up high, but not on the edge of it. I don't care for that. And so that was there. But then we started talking about that. I started to be able to get honest with myself. I started to be able to see myself as I actually was, not as I wanted you to see me. And part of my way of living had to do with, I just knew for sure that my job, in order to be okay, my job was to manage what I thought your image of me in your head was. I had to manage that. Because I wanted you to think of me in a particular way, depending on who you were. Not everybody's the same way. I gotta manage you one way, and Randy a little bit different, and Sam, she takes some special care. Got to get her just right. Carrie, well, think about that for a little bit. But I've got to manage what I think you think about me. I don't even know what you think about me. So how hard is that? How hard is it to manage what you think somebody thinks? But that was my full-time job. Because I was terrified you were going to find out who I was. I was terrified that you're going to find out that I am a lying, cheating lowlife. I came here, I was a punk. I was the absolute most arrogant person for the least possible reasons. I had no reason to be arrogant because I hadn't done anything. I wasn't, I like to think, well, in this small town I grew up in, we had 33 kids in my high school senior class. I could have been the smartest guy there, No, we had 3 doctors come out of that class. I'm not the smartest guy. So, well, I'm a reasonably decent athlete. Well, not compared to Mary Boland. Mary, still to this day, graduated in 1983, she has more gold and silver medals from the state track meet than any other human being. She's got like 25. She got 5 medals every year. That'd be 20, wouldn't it? Something like that. She ran for Nike, and I'm not anywhere near the best athlete, But so I've got to figure out how I can manage you so that you view me in the light that I want you to view me in. Very time consuming, very energy intensive. And when I got here and you told me to do these things, and I did these things, what happened to me was I felt like in my mind I'd had 3 or 5 drinks. The volume in my head went down, and I can relax. And I can be right here, right now. Because the importance for me to be right here, right now, is that, guilt and shame is in the past. When I look back and I look at what the kind of human being I was, the kinds of things I did to people, the kind of harms that I caused, I hated myself about that. Anxiety lives in the future because you're going to find out what I did. And so I can't let that happen. And I'm not as smart as I think I am. I'm not as hard worker as I think I am, so we're not going to have any money. We're going to be broke. We're going to be out on the street. And I live in that kind of anxiety. So I'm either feeling guilt and shame or anxiety when I'm living in either the past or the future. But you know what's right here, right now? God's right here, right now. God is in this 3 seconds or so that the psychologists call the present. And when I can stay in this moment, I'm not guilty, I'm not full of shame, and I'm not full of anxiety. And I can be at peace with you, with God, and myself. And if I'm okay with you, and I'm okay with God, and I'm okay with me, there's nobody else to play with, is there? And I found that here. So yes, we have a substitute. I have substituted the lifestyle of Alcoholics Anonymous for the lifestyle of drinking. I made a trade. I didn't quit drinking. I traded it. I traded what I did in order to stay drunk for what I'm going to do to stay sober. It's the best deal I ever made. You know, absolutely the best deal out there. But the ego being the ego, you know, surrender is an interesting thing. If you ever get a chance to read Harry Tebow's articles on surrender, he was a non-alcoholic psychiatrist who was fascinated with the process of Alcoholics Anonymous. He wrote several articles about surrender. He said it's the most amazing thing. He says in the alcoholic, an alcoholic can surrender his alcoholism, surrender his drinking, never going to drink again, absolutely mean it, and is just as serious about never drinking again as any human being on the planet. And the ego, over some period of time, usually not very long, starts to rebuild and starts to build this idea. And in me, here's what this idea sounds like. This time it'll be different. This time they're going to understand who you are and treat you accordingly. This time, if I don't drink the tequila with the worm in it and stay away from anything made in Tennessee or Kentucky, because George Dickel hurt me one day, boys, I tell you. But I've got some friends in Canada, those boys that make that Crown Royal and that kind of stuff. They're good guys. You know, they're good. So if I stay away from the Mexico stuff and the Tennessee, Kentucky stuff, and I stay drinking out of Canada, I'm in good shape. This time it'll be different. This time it'll be different. It was never different. It was in different places with different people, different booze. It was never different. And the second thing that's rolling around my mind that the ego tells me is true is that even if it's not different, the rules don't apply to you. Rules don't apply to you. You're special. You're different. Your set of circumstances, your personal set of circumstances, because of who you are, makes it okay for you to treat people horribly. It's okay for you to bounce checks. The sheriff's not going to bother you. Well, yeah, he will. Matter of fact, he'll arrest you for the damnedest thing in Texas. So, and the ego gets rebuilt. And surrender is releasing that one more time. One more time. You'd think after 33 years, this would be it'd be done. I'd have beat that thing to death. Be shattered. Well, here's an example of how my ego can get rebuilt. I'm 28, 29 years sober, living in Hickory, North Carolina. Nice day, no big deals going on. I'm right here, right now. Right? In the moment, everything's good. My wife wants to go to Dillard's at the mall. So we go, and I don't want to go where she's going. So I say, I'm gonna look at these watches. You know how they, right by the escalator, they usually have this big, long, sweeping counter full of all the watches and stuff like that. I'm gonna be right here. So I just look at these. I'm not gonna buy anything. I don't need a watch. I'm fine, but I like watches. I like looking at them. So I'll be right here when you get done. She's okay. So she goes up there, and I'm standing right at the very edge of the first little counter. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the sales gal over there, about where, maybe as far, not quite as far as that door over there. And I'm sitting there, so I hope she doesn't come over here. You know, I don't want to waste her time. I'm not buying anything. I don't want, no bother. She can keep doing whatever she's doing, you know, but she doesn't need to come over here. And I take 3 or 4 steps, And I realized, she hadn't even recognized me. That's just rude. I mean, she doesn't have to come over and try to sell me something, but she could say hi, I'll work my way around. She still has not moved, just standing there. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to talk to her manager and explain about customer service and how you treat people, and even if they're not buying, you recognize them and talk to them and whatever. And she still hadn't moved. I finally make my way all the way around where she's like right in front of me. I don't even look at her. I'm not even going to give her, she hadn't said nothing. And boy, my blood is boiling. My ego is like, she doesn't know who I am. I'd buy every watch in this counter case if I wanted to. There's just the disrespect. 5 minutes ago, I'm serene, happy. I'm just going to kill a few minutes while my wife goes. Now, I'm on a mission from God. I'm going to let her know who I am. And I'm going to get a little training session in for her on customer service. So I get right in front of her. I'm looking down, and I whip my head up, and I give her that, that stink eye, that we can give people when we're being judgmental and hypocritical, and judge, all that kind of fun stuff that I've mastered over the years. And I just whip my head up, and I look her right in the eye, and it's a mannequin. I have lost my mind.
Dang.
Because a mannequin's not giving me the respect. My mannequin hasn't spoken to me and given me little pats on the back and we're so glad you're here.
They need a different mannequin.
They need one that looks a hell of a lot less lifelike, I'll tell you that. You would have thought she was real too. I know you people.
Something one-dimensional.
Yeah, oh man, just a poster on the wall or something would have been fine. But, that's how quickly an ego can get rebuilt and just start festering once more on the inside. That's alcoholism. I hadn't taken a drink. 28, 29 years. But I'm that same angry, self-righteous little punk who just needs 3 or 4 or 5 drinks to be okay. And of course I looked up and I just almost peed myself laughing so hard. I'm like, oh my, I can't wait to get out in the car and tell my wife this stupid story. And because now it's funny. There was a time when that wouldn't have been funny. I'm not telling anybody that I'm pissed off at a mannequin, right? That's not happening. Such the difference. How do you get from where I was to where I am today? We moved here, relocated. We bought some property outside of Winona, and we're building a house. We're living in the house that's on there. When we move out of there, my daughter and her family want to move into that house and be close to us. This is the same genetics. My daughter's never seen me drink. My current wife's never seen me drink. But it's the same genetics of those people who said, we don't want you in our lives for at least a year. Go away. And now, my 2-year-old grandson and my son and daughter and son-in-law want to be with us. I don't know where else you can get that. They say that Alcoholics Anonymous grew in the early days for 2 reasons. One was personal recoveries. Sober up drunks. That's a good thing. But the second, maybe most important reason, is reunited families. And that family that cut me off and several years later, over a period of years, I made living amends to these people. And I was holding my mother's hand and kissed her on the forehead when she died. I said, I love you. I know you love me. If you're ready to go, it's okay. You can go. Last thing I ever said to my father was this alcoholic who was a difficult guy to get along with. And I used to blame my parents for a lot. That they didn't raise me right, and that they hadn't done this, and they hadn't done that, and they should have done this, and they should have done that. Particularly my dad. What I had to realize through inventories that I've taken is that I didn't give them much to work with. It wasn't like they failed. It's like I wasn't going to participate anyway. They did the best they could with what they had, and I did not give them much to work with. And so my dad and I had a cordial hatred for a long time, way into this program. And I was able to make amends to him in the parking lot of a church going to an AA meeting with him. And from that point on, we had a love affair, my dad and I. Next 4 or 5 years of his life before he passed away, absolute love affair. I would want any son to have that relationship with their father. And it was because of Alcoholics Anonymous, because of what he learned. By that time, he was sober 16 years. I was about 4 years sober. And we reunited and we had a love affair. Absolute love affair. And you can't get there from where we started to where we ended, except through the grace of God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you for letting me share.